One of the most uncomfortable truths about human development is that good parenting does not guarantee good outcomes. We like to believe that if children are raised in a loving home with moral guidance, they will naturally grow into compassionate adults. But reality, both in the real world and in fiction, constantly disproves that idea. Few stories illustrate this better than the contrast between Don Quixote Doflamingo and his younger brother Corazon in One Piece. A simple, real-world example highlights this perfectly. In a video circulating online, a father prepares a meal for his 3 children, roasted fruit and bread, making exactly 3 portions. When the food is served, 2 of the children immediately take their portions and begin eating. The 3rd child, without being asked, breaks his portion in half and offers it to the father. The father declines and gives the piece back, choosing to eat only the bread. All 3 children were raised by the same parents, in the same household, yet only one child instinctively thought about the father's needs. This raises a difficult but important question. If their upbringing was identical, why were their responses so different? The classic debate of nature versus nurture assumes that behavior can be traced cleanly back to either biology or environment. In reality, it's neither, and it's actually both. Parenting provides tools, not outcomes. It teaches children what kindness looks like, but it does not force them to value it equally. In the video, the 2 children who ate immediately weren't necessarily selfish or poorly raised. They may simply have been focused on their own hunger, operating on impulse rather than reflection. The 3rd child demonstrated a different internal wiring, greater empathy, awareness, or emotional sensitivity in that moment. That instinct didn't come from a rule or instruction, it came from something internal. This distinction matters when examining Doflamingo. Doflamingo was not abused. His parents, Homing and his wife, were among the kindest celestial dragons we ever see. They willingly renounced their status, chose a life among common people, and raised their sons with humility. Corazon emerged from this upbringing compassionate, self-sacrificing, and morally grounded. Doflamingo did not. Many fans assume trauma alone explains his descent, but trauma affects people differently. Both brothers were beaten, ostracized, and starved. Both lost their parents. Yet only one of them internalized the idea that the world owed him suffering in return. Doflamingo's downfall wasn't simply what happened to him, it was how he interpreted it. From the beginning, Doflamingo viewed himself as entitled. Even as a child, he struggled to let go of the belief that he was inherently superior. When the world rejected him, he didn't question that belief, he weaponized it. The suffering didn't humble him, it enraged him. He concluded that if kindness didn't protect him, then cruelty was the only truth that mattered. Corazon reached the opposite conclusion. He saw the same cruelty and decided that it was something that should never be repeated. This brings us back to the father and his children. The child who shared wasn't responding to instruction, he was responding to perspective. He noticed something the others didn't, that the person providing the food might go without. That awareness can't be forced. It emerges from temperament, emotional sensitivity, and personal values forming in real time. Doflamingo lacked that perspective. He did not see others as equals capable of suffering like him. He saw the world as something that failed him and therefore deserved punishment. Corazon, on the other hand, developed empathy precisely because of suffering. This is why siblings, raised identically, can diverge so dramatically. Parenting shapes the environment, but character determines interpretation. One child sees hardship as a reason to protect others. Another sees it as justification to dominate them. The lesson from Doflamingo and Corazon is not that parenting doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But parenting is not destiny. Kind parents can raise a villain. Harsh circumstances can produce saints. What ultimately separates them is how individuals process pain, entitlement, and responsibility. Doflamingo represents the person who believes suffering entitles them to cruelty. Corazon represents the person who believes suffering obligates them to kindness. And that difference, whether in a pirate's backstory or a family dinner table, is not something parents can fully control. It is the space where nature and nurture collide, and where human choice quietly takes over. The difference between Doflamingo and Corazon does not end with how they interpret suffering. It becomes visible in how they treat other people once they have power. This is where the abstract debate of nature versus nurture turns into concrete behavior. Doflamingo grows into someone who views people as extensions of himself, rather than individuals with intrinsic value. Although he repeatedly refers to the Don Quixote pirates as his family, his definition of family is rooted in ownership, not care. His crew exists to serve his ambition, shield him from consequences, and die in his place if necessary. Loyalty is expected, but empathy is never genuinely reciprocated. This mindset traces directly back to his childhood conclusion that kindness is fragile and power is the only reliable currency. Because the world showed him no mercy, he believes mercy is a lie. As a result, his leadership is transactional. Useful usefulness determines worth. When a crew member falls, Virgo exposed, Monet killed, Pika defeated, Doflamingo does not grieve them as people. He accepts their deaths as inevitable losses, necessary steps in preserving his throne. Their lives matter only insofar as they reinforce his control. In this sense, Doflamingo resembles the child who eats without hesitation. He takes what is placed before him without pausing to consider who might be left without. It is not that he was never taught kindness, it is that he learned to dismiss it as impractical. Corazon represents the opposite response to the same upbringing. Where Doflamingo turned suffering into entitlement, Corazon turned it into restraint. He does not seek power, nor does he attempt to dominate others to protect himself from pain. Instead, he absorbs suffering quietly, believing that if cruelty is unavoidable, then at the very least, it should end with him. This belief reaches its clearest expression in his relationship with Trafalgar Law. When Corazon meets Law, he recognizes something deeply familiar. A child consumed by rage, shaped by trauma, and teetering on the edge of becoming another Doflamingo. Law's hatred of the world mirrors Doflamingo's own descent, and Corazon understands that if nothing intervenes, the outcome will be the same. What makes Corazon's actions meaningful is that he does not try to control Law. He does not demand loyalty or obedience. He does not weaponize Law's pain for his own goals. Instead, he offers something Doflamingo never could: unconditional concern without expectation. Corazon risks his life repeatedly to secure Law's survival, not because Law is useful, but because Law is a child who deserves a future that is not dictated by hatred. Ultimately, Corazon gives his life so Law can live, knowing he will receive nothing in return. This is the inverse of Doflamingo's worldview. Where Doflamingo sacrifices others to preserve himself, Corazon sacrifices himself to preserve another. Law's survival, and more importantly, his moral trajectory, stands as proof that nurture is not powerless. One act of genuine compassion at the right moment can interrupt even the most destructive patterns. Corazon does not erase Law's trauma, but he reframes it. Law learns that suffering does not entitle him to cruelty. It challenges him to choose something better. By the end of their stories, Doflamingo and Corazon leave behind vastly different legacies. Doflamingo builds a kingdom sustained by fear, manipulation, and expendability. His family is large, loyal, and doomed, because loyalty built on terror can never outlive the tyrant it serves. Corazon leaves behind no empire, no followers, and no power. What he leaves behind is a single life saved, and in doing so, he prevents the creation of another monster. That quiet impact ultimately outweighs everything Doflamingo tried to control. Together, they reinforce the uncomfortable lesson introduced earlier. Children can be raised by the same parents, in the same environment, and still choose radically different paths. Parenting shapes possibility, but interpretation shapes destiny. Some people respond to pain by hardening their hearts. Others respond by ensuring no one else has to feel the same pain. That is the true divide between Doflamingo and Corazon, and why their story remains one of the most powerful examinations of nature, nurture, and moral choice in one piece.